Have you ever felt your love wasn't truly seen? Let's dive into this topic and uncover the truth behind love and self-interest. Welcome to My Minutes. Ever been in a situation where someone's love felt off? Like too much, too intense, too focused on them?
Oh, absolutely. It's like they're performing a love song, but only they know the lyrics.
Exactly. This article talks about love with temptation, a kind of self-serving affection where the lover is really just feeding their own ego.
Yeah? Like that story about the high school sweethearts, right? He was head over heels, but she felt like a prop in his grand love story.
Precisely. It highlights how this love is more about the giver than the receiver. He wasn't seeing her, just a reflection of his own deep affection.
So it's narcissism masked as devotion? Kind of creepy when you put it like that.
Totally. The article compares it to how some parents interact with their kids, pushing them into activities for bragging rights, not genuine interest in the child's happiness.
Oh, I see. It's about control and validation, not actual connection.
Exactly. The giver gets a self-esteem boost, but the receiver feels used, unseen, and often confused. The article also mentions those over-the-top suitors showering gifts and affection.
But it feels calculated, almost predatory, right?
Right, it's like they're trying to buy affection, proving their own worth, not truly valuing the other person. If you enjoyed this insightful look at love and relationships, hit that like button and subscribe for more Mind Minutes.
And if you've encountered this love with temptation, share your story in the comments. It's always fascinating to hear other perspectives.
So we were talking about this love with temptation, right, where affection becomes a tool for self-validation.
Yeah, like using someone as a stepping stone in their own personal growth narrative rather than a genuine connection.
Exactly. And it made me think about these classic psychology texts, Kohut's work on narcissism, for instance. He talks about how some people need others to mirror their idealized self-image.
Oh, interesting. So, like, they need constant admiration to feel whole?
Precisely. And that ties in with Beebe and Stern's research on early object experiences. If a child doesn't receive healthy emotional mirroring, they might develop a persistent need for external validation.
So they're constantly seeking that missing piece of the puzzle from childhood? That makes a lot of sense.
It does, doesn't it? It's not just romantic relationships either. Think about those parents who live vicariously through their kids. They're not seeing the child as an individual, but as a vehicle for their own ambitions.
Right. And Tronick's research on infant emotional communication supports this, doesn't it? He shows how crucial those early interactions are for developing a sense of self. If you enjoyed this in-depth look at psychology, be sure to follow Mind Minutes for more insightful discussions.
Absolutely. Hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss out. We have new podcasts coming out every other day.
And let us know your thoughts on love and validation in the comments below. We always love hearing your perspectives.
So we were diving deep into these fascinating dynamics of love and validation, and it struck me how much of this stems from those early childhood experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like those foundational interactions set the stage for how we perceive and seek connection later on, right?
Precisely. And this Beebe and Stern research focusing on early object experiences, it's really eye-opening. A lack of healthy emotional mirroring, it can leave a lasting impact.
It's like a blueprint for future relationships. If that early mirroring is distorted or absent, it can create this void, this constant yearning for external validation.
Totally. You're always trying to fill that gap. And it makes so much sense when you consider Tronick's work, the still face experiment.
Right? It highlights how crucial those early interactions are for a child's development. Those little moments of connection or disconnection shape their sense of self. It's like those micro ruptures and repairs in the interaction. They teach the infant about emotional regulation, about trust.
Exactly. And if those repairs aren't happening consistently, if the caregiver's face remains still too long, that can be really unsettling for the infant.
It can lead to a sense of insecurity, a feeling that their needs aren't being met. And I think that's what Bealey and Tronick were getting at in their 2011 paper on infants' meaning making, right?
Precisely. Those early experiences really lay the groundwork for mental health later on. It's powerful stuff.
Yeah. It's like those early interactions are writing the code for how we experience love and connection throughout life. And Breselton, Kozowski, and Main's research way back in '74, focusing on the origins of reciprocity, it really paved the way for understanding this, didn't it?
It did. They really highlighted the importance of those early back and forth exchanges between mother and infant. It's not just one way. The infant is actively shaping the interaction too.
It's a dance, a conversation where both partners are contributing. And if that dance is out of sync, if the reciprocity is missing, that can have long-term consequences.
Absolutely. And Stroop's work, too, emphasizes the long-term impact of these early attachment patterns.
It's like those early bonds create a template for how we connect with others, how we see ourselves in relationships.
And if that template is flawed, it can create a vulnerability to seeking validation in unhealthy ways, like those love with temptation scenarios we were discussing.
Exactly. Using others to prop up a fragile sense of self. If you're finding this conversation as fascinating as we are, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe.
So, picking up on this thread of, well, love, right? And how it can sometimes get twisted, this love with temptation thing, it's really resonating with me.
Yeah, it's like, where does genuine affection end and manipulation begin? That's the blurry line, isn't it?
Totally. And this article, it brings up some fascinating points. This idea of using love as a tool, a means to an end. It's kind of chilling.
It is. It's like, are you loving me, or the idea of loving me, the reflection it casts back on you?
Exactly. And the article connects this to narcissism, right? That need for external validation, using others to prop up a fragile ego.
Yeah, and that makes me think about Firestone and Catlett's work on intimacy, how true connection requires vulnerability, a willingness to see and be seen.
Oh, absolutely. And if you're constantly focused on your reflection, you miss the other person entirely. It becomes all about performance, right?
Totally. Performing a role rather than engaging in genuine interaction. And this article even links it back to childhood experiences, which is fascinating.
Right. This whole idea that early interactions shape our understanding of love and connection, I mean, that's huge.
Yeah, it is. It's like those early attachment patterns set the stage for how we relate to others throughout life. So powerful. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the psychology of love, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and notification bell.
Absolutely. And leave a comment below. Tell us about your experiences with love with temptation. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
So, circling back to this idea of early childhood experiences, this article, it really highlights how crucial those early interactions are. It's not just about love, but about developing a healthy sense of self, right?
Precisely. And it mentioned a study, a longitudinal study from birth to adulthood on attachment and development. Really interesting stuff. It emphasizes the long-term impact of those early bonds.
Oh, wow. So they followed these individuals for years, tracking how those early attachment patterns played out in their adult relationships?
Yeah, it really underscores the importance of those early years. It's like laying the foundation, you know?
It is. And if that foundation is shaky, it can create vulnerabilities later on, like a predisposition to seeking validation in unhealthy ways, like through this love with temptation.
Exactly. It all ties together, doesn't it? The early experiences, the development of self, and how we navigate love and connection as adults.
Yeah, it's a complex interplay of factors, and this article, with its focus on love with temptation, it's like a lens helping us see those dynamics more clearly. Thanks for joining us on Mind Minutes for this insightful exploration of love and relationships. And a huge thank you to all our listeners. We really appreciate your continued support.